Commander Jack Ripley had been stationed aboard the Galactic Council's flagship, the Harmonious Unity, for exactly 3 standard cycles when the unthinkable happened. He was enjoying his morning coffee, a luxury he'd fought tooth and nail to have included in his diplomatic package, when the station-wide alert system blared to life. Attention all sentient beings. This is not a drill. Security situation Alpha 9 in progress. All non-essential personnel return to quarters. Ripley sighed, set down his coffee, and watched as his alien colleagues immediately descended into panic. The Harmonious Unity had never experienced anything beyond a security situation Delta 3, which had been triggered when Ambassador Glorg's pet Yalp had escaped its containment field and slobbered on the refreshment table. "What's an Alpha 9? He asked Lieutenant Commander Dex, a 4-armed Quatrian whose exoskeleton was currently clicking in distress. "Hostage situation." Dex's mandibles clicked faster. "We've never had one. The concept exists only in protocol simulations." Ripley raised an eyebrow. "Never? In the entire history of the Galactic Council?" "Violence is illogical. Hostage-taking doubly so," Dex replied, all 4 hands twitching nervously. "The Galactic Peace Accords have maintained stability for over 3,000 years. "Until today," Ripley muttered. The emergency council meeting that followed revealed the situation in all its chaotic glory. A radical faction calling themselves the Free Systems Movement had stormed the Galactic Embassy on Proxima Station. They were holding 17 high-ranking diplomats hostage, including the Archduke of Bellatrix and 2 Mindweaver Supreme Elders. High Counselor Zorn, a towering crystalline being whose facets glowed an alarming shade of purple, addressed the room. "This is unprecedented. The perpetrators demand autonomy for the Outer Rim systems and recognition as a sovereign entity." "Standard terrorist playbook," Ripley muttered under his breath. The counselor's crystal structure vibrated in distress. "We have no playbook for this, Commander Ripley. That is precisely the problem." "So what's the plan?" Ripley asked. "We will send negotiators, of course. The Volnarian ambassador has volunteered his services. Their logical approach should resolve this efficiently." Ripley winced. "With all due respect, High Counselor, that might not be the best approach for a hostage situation." The council chamber fell silent, and 17 pairs of alien eyes, plus whatever sensory organs the non-ocular species used, turned to stare at him. "The human has concerns," Zorn announced, as if Ripley had just suggested they nuke the station. "Do elaborate, Commander." But before Ripley could explain the intricacies of hostage negotiation, the crisis management team had already dispatched the Volnarian ambassador to handle the situation. Ripley sat back and prepared to witness what he suspected would be the first of many spectacular failures. The mood in the observation room was tense as the council gathered to monitor the Volnarian ambassador's negotiation attempt. Ambassador Logic stood before the view screen, his tall, slender frame rigid with confidence, metallic skin reflecting the emergency lighting. "Observe," High Counselor Zorn whispered to Ripley. "The Volnarians have perfected the art of logical persuasion over 12 millennia. Their minds function on pure reason." Ripley nodded politely but kept his doubts to himself. The communication channel opened, and Ambassador Logix began. "Greetings, Free Systems Movement. I am Ambassador Logix of the Volnarian Collective. I will now present a logical analysis demonstrating why your actions are inherently counterproductive to your stated goals." For the next 20 minutes, the ambassador delivered a meticulously structured argument, complete with probability matrices and outcome scenarios. The hostage-taker's leader, a gruff-looking Salakian with cybernetic enhancements, listened in silence. When Logix finally concluded his presentation, the Salakian leader burst into laughter. "Your logic is impeccable, Ambassador," the leader rasped. "Unfortunately, we don't give a quantum particle about logic. For every minute you waste our time with calculations, we will remove one appendage from a hostage. Starting now. The feed cut to screams as the Salaxian approached the Archduke of Bellatrix with something that looked disturbingly like garden shears. "Terminate connection," Zorn shouted. The view screen went black. The council chamber erupted in panic. Ripley rubbed his temples. "Perhaps," Zorn said, facets dimming with distress, "a different approach is needed. The emoti blobs are renowned for their empathic abilities." Ripley cleared his throat. "High Counselor, I really think the emoti blobs will connect on an emotional level and bring harmony to this situation." Zorn interrupted. "Ambassador Gloop, if you would please assist." A quivering mass of translucent blue jelly wobbled forward. "I would be honored to serve the council in this capacity," it burbled. "I shall attune my empathic receptors to maximum sensitivity to ensure I fully absorb their emotional state." "That's exactly what I'm worried about," Ripley muttered. The connection was reestablished. The emoti blob ambassador oozed confidence as it began its empathic communication ritual, its body pulsating with gentle colors. "I sense your frustration," it began soothingly. "Your anger is valid. Your pain resonates within me. Let us explore these feelings together and find a path to mutual understanding." For a moment it seemed to be working. The Salaxian leader's aggressive posture softened slightly. But then one of his lieutenants shoved a hostage, causing them to cry out in fear. The emoti blob ambassador immediately absorbed that fear, and everything went downhill. Its body began to tremble as it absorbed more and more negative emotions from the hostage situation. Within minutes, what had been a composed diplomatic entity was now a quivering puddle of anxiety. So much fear, it gurgled before collapsing into a pool of distressed goo that began seeping through the floor grates. "Connect," Zorn ordered. The council was now in full crisis mode. Species that could sweat were sweating. Those that couldn't were exhibiting their own stress responses, releasing spores, changing colors, or in the case of the gaseous collective representative, emitting a smell reminiscent of rotten eggs. "Perhaps," suggested Counselor Plex of the Mindweavers, "a telepathic approach would be more effective. Our mental abilities can bypass verbal communication entirely." Ripley stood up. "Counselor, with all due respect, sending a telepath into the mind of a violent hostage-taker is like—" "An excellent suggestion." Zorn interrupted. "Elder Plex, please proceed." Elder Plex, a willowy figure with an oversized cranium and silver skin, approached the communication terminal. The elder closed its enormous eyes, and the tendrils extending from its head began to glow. "I am establishing mental contact," it announced. "I will simply extract their true demands and suggest peaceful compliance directly to their cerebral cortices." 5 seconds later, Elder Plex collapsed to the floor, nose bleeding a silvery fluid, tendrils twitching spasmodically. They have neural scramblers," the elder gasped. "In their minds, such anger, such chaos, no logical patterns to follow." Medical teams rushed in as Ripley shook his head. "Now will someone listen to me?" he asked the room. High Counselor Zorn's crystalline structure dimmed in defeat. "Very well, Commander Ripley. It seems our conventional approaches have failed. What would you suggest?" Ripley stood, rolling up his sleeves. "Let me talk to them." "You." The counselor's tone conveyed clear skepticism. "No offense intended, Commander, but humans are one of the youngest species in the Council. Your civilization has barely achieved interstellar travel." "True," Ripley nodded. "But we've been taking hostages and negotiating with hostage takers since before we invented the wheel. Trust me, we've got experience with this sort of thing." The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Zorn's crystals flickered in the Galactic Council equivalent of a resigned sigh. Very well, Commander. The situation cannot possibly get worse. You may proceed. First things first, Ripley said, rolling his shoulders like a prizefighter preparing to enter the ring. I need information. Who are these Free Systems Movement people? What's their real beef with the Council? The alien diplomats exchanged uncomfortable glances. They are terrorists, Zorn stated flatly. Chaos bringers who? Yeah, I got that part, Ripley interrupted, earning gasps from several counselors unused to being cut off. But terrorists don't pop up out of nowhere. What's their actual grievance? A small, mouse-like alien with oversized ears timidly raised a paw. The Outer Rim systems have petitioned for greater autonomy for 3 centuries. Their resource-rich planets are heavily taxed to support Central Council worlds. Ah, Ripley nodded. Classic core versus frontier tension. Tale as old as time. Commander, Zorn's crystalline body vibrated with impatience. We do not require a sociopolitical analysis. We require our diplomats returned safely. Can't have one without the other, Ripley countered. Now, get me a direct line to them. Audio only at first, no video. And somebody find me some coffee. This might take a while. The Council reluctantly complied. As Ripley sipped his hastily procured coffee, which tasted like it had been filtered through an alien sock, he considered his approach. The communication system chirped to life. This is Commander Jack Ripley of Earth, human representative to the Galactic Council. Who am I speaking with? There was a pause, then Captain Dreas of the Free Systems Movement. What happened to the logical calculator and the melting blob? They've been relieved of duty, Ripley replied casually. Look, I'll be straight with you. I'm new here. Been with the Council less than a year. So I don't have any stake in this fight. Then why are you calling? The gruff voice demanded. Professional curiosity, Ripley shrugged, though the gesture couldn't be seen. On Earth we have a saying, never bring a knife to a gunfight. You guys brought garden shears to a diplomatic summit. That's either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. I'm trying to figure out which. The council chamber went deathly silent. Several diplomats looked ready to faint. After a long pause, Captain Dreas laughed. You're different from the others. Yeah, I get that a lot, Ripley said. So, 17 hostages. That's a lot of mouths to feed. Any chance you'd consider a gesture of goodwill? Release 1 or 2 of the less important ones. No concessions without action from the council, Draz growled. Fair enough, Ripley nodded. So what exactly do you want? And spare me the manifesto version. Bullet points, please. The council watched in amazement as Ripley casually bantered with the hostage taker as if they were haggling over the price of a used hovercrafter. We demand recognition as a sovereign political entity, a 70% reduction in resource taxation, and our own seat on the council, Draz stated. Okay, so that's the dream scenario, Ripley said. What's your realistic ask? There was silence on the other end. Clearly, no one had asked them this question before. The same demands, Draz finally replied, but with slightly less conviction. Right, Ripley drawled. And you think holding the Archduke of Bellatrix's tentacles hostage is going to get you there? Come on, Draz. You're obviously smart enough to have pulled this off. You must know the council can't cave to these demands without inviting every other disgruntled system to try the same tactics. Another pause. We are prepared to execute hostages to demonstrate our resolve. And then what? Ripley challenged. You kill the Archduke, and suddenly the council says, oh, these guys are serious. Let's give them everything they want. Nah. They'll send in the Galactic Marines, and you'll all be cosmic dust. Aim over, No response. The tension in the council chamber was so thick you could cut it with a ceremonial Praxian honor blade. "What do you propose?" Dreas finally asked. Ripley grinned at the council members, who were now hanging on his every word. "Let's start with something realistic. How about I come over there, we talk face to face, and you don't cut anybody's appendages off while we chat? As a show of good faith, you can tell me which of your demands is your top priority, and I'll personally bring it to the council's attention." "You would enter the embassy alone?" Dreas sounded genuinely surprised. "Sure, why not? I've been to worse dinner parties." After a moment of muffled discussion on the other end, Dreas responded, agreed. "You have safe passage, Commander Ripley of Earth." When the communication ended, the council erupted. "This is unprecedented. He cannot enter alone. The human will be killed." Ripley held up his hands. "Relax, everyone. This is hostage negotiation 101. Establish rapport, humanize yourself to the hostage takers, create a personal connection." "But Commander," Zorn's crystals pulsed with concern, "you are risking your life." "Part of the job," Ripley shrugged, heading for the door. "Oh, and if I don't make it back, tell the human ambassador I'd like Highway to Hell played at my memorial service." As the doors closed behind him, Ripley heard one alien ask another, "What is this highway to hell?" and smiled to himself. Sometimes being the weird species had its advantages. The walk to the embassy's sealed entrance felt like a scene from one of those old Western films Ripley's grandfather loved. All that was missing was tumbleweeds and a dusty poncho. Security drones hovered overhead, their weapons trained on the entrance but powered down at Ripley's insistence. Opening fire is the absolute last resort, he had told the security chief. And I mean last as in the sun is exploding, and we're all going to die anyway last. As the massive doors parted, Ripley recalled his hostage negotiation training at the United Earth Defense Academy. Commander Ortiz's gravelly voice echoed in his memory. "Remember, cadets, hostage negotiation isn't about logic or even empathy. It's about psychology. It's a dance, a game of chess, and sometimes a poker match all rolled into one." Ripley had excelled in those classes, much to the surprise of his instructors. Ripley Ortiz had told him, "You've got a gift for talking to crazy people. Probably because you're halfway there yourself." Captain Dreas waited just inside the entrance, flanked by 2 armed guards. The Salakian was even more imposing in person, 7 feet of muscle, scales, and cybernetic enhancements. His left eye glowed an unnatural blue, clearly some kind of scanning tech. "Commander Ripley," Dreas nodded. "You have courage coming here." "Or stupidity," Ripley shrugged. "The jury's still out. Nice place you've taken over. Very diplomatic." The embassy's grand hall was designed to accommodate beings from thousands of different worlds. Gravity plates could be adjusted for different species' needs. Atmosphere bubbles could create pockets of specific gas mixtures. And temperature zones ranged from cryogenic to plasma hot. Currently, it looked like a high-tech disaster area. Furniture had been overturned to create barricades, and the hostages were gathered in the central meeting area, guarded by more free systems fighters. "Your weapons?" Dreas held out a webbed hand. Ripley spread his arms. "Never carry them. Too much paperwork if you lose one." Draz's eye implant whirred as it scanned him. No concealed weapons detected. Unusual for a military commander. "I'm a diplomat now," Ripley corrected. "My weapons are words, charm, and occasionally bad jokes. Speaking of which, hear the one about the Salakian who walks into a gravity bar." Draz stared at him blankly. "Never mind. Cultural humor is tricky," Ripley said. "So, where are we having this chat? And please say somewhere with chairs." These artificial gravity fields play hell with my lower back. As they moved deeper into the embassy, Ripley casually observed everything: the number of hostage takers, 12, their weapons, energy rifles, standard military grade. The condition of the hostages, scared but unharmed, and potential exit routes. Draz led him to what had been the ambassador's private office. 2 more guards stood watch over a nervous-looking Archduke of Bellatrix, whose tentacles were indeed all still attached to his body. "Your tentaculousness," Ripley bowed slightly to the Archduke. "Hanging in there?" "Commander," the Archduke's voice trembled. "This situation is most distressing." "Could be worse," Ripley said cheerfully. "You could be stuck in one of those council budget meetings. 17 hours discussing the proper allocation of nutrient paste for the xylophage delegation. I'd rather be taken hostage." The Archduke looked confused, but Draz let out something that might have been a chuckle. "You are strange, human," the Salakian said, gesturing to a chair. "I get that a lot." Ripley sat down, making himself comfortable. "So let's cut to the chase. The council isn't going to give you sovereignty, a tax cut, and a council seat. But they might be willing to discuss one of those things if everyone walks out of here alive and with all their original parts. The council has ignored our petitions for centuries," Draz growled. "Why would they listen now?" "Because you've got their attention," Ripley said. "But there's a difference between getting someone's attention and getting what you want. Right now, you're at the attention stage. Whether you move to the getting what you want stage depends on what happens in the next few hours." Back at the academy, Ortiz had drilled into them the importance of creating a bond with hostage takers. "Make them see you as a person, not an obstacle," he'd said. "Once they start to like you, or at least respect you, they'll be less likely to shoot you in the face." "Tell me, Draz," Ripley leaned forward, "what made you join the Free Systems movement? You don't strike me as a political zealot." The question caught the Salakian off guard. For a moment, his tough facade cracked. "My home moon, Vex Prime, was stripped of resources by council mining operations. My family were moisture farmers. When the aquifers were tapped for industrial use, our farm died. My parents died trying to save it." He paused. "The council never responded to our distress signals." Ripley nodded solemnly. "I'm sorry about your parents. That's rough. On Earth, we've had similar conflicts. Corporations versus family farms. Core worlds versus colonies. Tale as old as civilization itself." For the next hour, Ripley listened as Draz detailed the legitimate grievances of the Outer Rim systems. He nodded in the right places, asked clarifying questions, and occasionally made observations that showed he was genuinely listening. The alien hostage takers seemed increasingly confused by this approach. They had expected threats, logical arguments, or emotional pleas, not a conversation that made them feel understood. "Your situation sucks," Ripley finally said, "and you're right to be angry. But this," he gestured around the room, "this isn't going to fix it. Best case scenario, you end up martyrs. Worst case, you're villains who got a bunch of diplomats killed and set your cause back centuries." "Then what would you suggest?" Draz asked, his tone now less hostile. Ripley smiled. "I thought you'd never ask." 4 hours into the negotiation, things took an unexpected turn. Just as Ripley was making progress, Draz had agreed to release the non-council hostages. As a show of good faith, the embassy's communication system crackled to life. "Attention, Free Systems terrorists," boomed the voice of General Klax, Supreme Commander of the Galactic Peace Force. "We have surrounded the embassy with 3 battalions of peace enforcers. You have 1 standard hour to release all hostages and surrender, or we will use lethal force. There will be no further communication." Ripley closed his eyes and silently cursed in 5 different Earth languages. "You betrayed us." Draz roared, his dorsal spines flaring in rage. This was all a distraction while they positioned their troops. I had nothing to do with this, Ripley said calmly, even as two guards pointed their weapons at his head. The military always thinks they can solve problems by showing up with bigger guns. It's a universal constant, like gravity or bureaucratic incompetence. But Draz was beyond listening. New plan, he snarled. We execute one hostage every 10 minutes until our shuttle is prepared for departure. Starting with you, Commander. The situation was deteriorating fast. Ripley's mind raced through options. He could try to overpower the guards, but against 12 armed hostage takers, that was suicide. He could beg for his life, but showing weakness now would only make things worse. Instead, he laughed. It wasn't a nervous chuckle or a defiant snort. It was a genuine, full-bellied laugh that echoed through the embassy's grand hall. Everyone, hostage takers and hostages alike, stared at him in confusion. Something amusing, human? Draz growled. Just the cosmic irony. Ripley wiped a tear from his eye. You really have no idea what you've done, do you? Explain, Draz demanded, energy rifle still pointed at Ripley's head. You just threatened to execute a human diplomat, Ripley said, as if explaining to a child. Do you know what happened to the last species that killed a human diplomat? No, you don't, because they don't exist anymore. This was, of course, complete fiction. But Ripley delivered it with such conviction that doubt flickered across Draz's face. You're bluffing, the Salachian said, but with less certainty. Am I? Ripley raised an eyebrow. Humanity was admitted to the Galactic Council less than a decade ago. What do you know about us, really? Did you know that before we achieved interstellar travel, we had over 15,000 nuclear weapons pointed at ourselves? For fun. The hostage takers exchanged nervous glances. Or that human diplomatic vessels carry what we call the Omega Protocol? If I don't check in every 4 hours, automated systems launch targeted antimatter strikes at predetermined coordinates. Ripley checked his watch. I was due to check in 12 minutes ago. This, too, was complete fiction, but Ripley had learned during his training that confidence in specific details sell a bluff. The more outrageous the claim, the more specific you needed to be. I don't believe you, Draz said, but his weapon hand trembled slightly. That's your prerogative, Ripley shrugged. But ask yourself this, why would the Council send a human to negotiate? We're new, inexperienced. Unless he let the word hang in the air, there's something about humans that makes us uniquely qualified for this situation. Sweat beaded on Draz's scales as he considered this. What do you want? Same thing I wanted 4 hours ago. A peaceful resolution, Ripley said. Release the hostages, and I'll ensure you get a fair hearing for your grievances. And I'll personally make sure General Klax doesn't turn you into fish food. And if we refuse... Ripley's expression hardened. Then I can't guarantee what happens next. Humans have a saying, negotiate with us and we'll be your best friends. Force our hand, and you'll see why the rest of the galaxy fears us. The Council observation room was in chaos. They had been monitoring the situation through surveillance systems, and Ripley's claims about Earth's Omega Protocol had sent them into a panic. Is this true? High Counselor Zorn demanded of the human ambassador, who had been summoned from her quarters. Ambassador Helena Rodriguez struggled to keep a straight face. Commander Ripley is employing creative negotiation tactics. But these claims about human aggression... Would you prefer to test them? Rodriguez asked coolly. Or would you prefer to let Commander Ripley finish his negotiation? Back in the embassy, Draz was conferring quietly with his lieutenants. Ripley maintained his confident posture, but internally he was calculating his odds of reaching the door if things went south. Finally, Dreas turned back to him. We will release the hostages in exchange for your guarantee of safe passage and a formal hearing before the full council for our grievances. Ripley nodded solemnly. You have my word. And contrary to what I implied earlier, my word actually means something. 3 tense hours later, the last hostage walked free from the embassy, followed by Ripley and the Free Systems rebels, who were taken into custody but treated with surprising respect by the Galactic Peace Force. As Ripley passed General Clax, the general leaned down and whispered, "This Omega Protocol, is it real?" Ripley winked. "Want to find out?" The emergency session of the Galactic Council the following day was unlike any in recorded history. For one thing, it started with a standing ovation for a human. Commander Ripley, High Counselor Zorn's crystals glowed with warm colors as he addressed the chamber. On behalf of the Galactic Council, I extend our profound gratitude for your successful resolution of yesterday's crisis. Ripley, who hadn't slept in 36 hours and was running on coffee and adrenaline, nodded modestly. Just doing my job, Counselor. That is precisely what we wish to discuss, Zorn continued. It has become apparent that humans possess unique capabilities when it comes to crisis negotiation. We're unpredictable, Ambassador Rodriguez supplied helpfully. Indeed, Zorn's crystals flickered in what might have been amusement. Commander Ripley employed tactics that would never occur to more evolved species. He lied, stated a Vulnarian representative bluntly, fabricated threats, employed psychological manipulation. I prefer to think of it as creative problem-solving, Ripley countered. No one died, right? That is undeniable, Zorn acknowledged. And it has led the Council to establish a new protocol, effective immediately. All hostage situations or similar crises will be handled by human negotiators. Ripley blinked. Come again. The Council has voted unanimously, Zorn announced. In cases of hostage-taking, violent standoffs, or extortion scenarios, humans will be deployed as primary negotiators. You want us to be the galaxy's hostage negotiators? Rodriguez asked incredulously. Your species' capacity for bluffing, psychological insight, and what you call thinking outside the box makes you uniquely suited to the role, Zorn explained. We have already begun updating the galactic emergency response protocols to read, in case of hostage situation, find the nearest human. Ripley couldn't help but laugh. Of all the ways humanity might make its mark on galactic civilization, becoming the go-to species for talking down armed criminals hadn't been on his bingo card. 6 months later, Ripley found himself on a shuttle heading to the Andromeda outpost, where a group of rogue AI had taken control of the main computer systems and were threatening to vent the atmosphere unless their demands for digital personhood were met. Sitting across from him was Tara Lee, a former NYPD hostage negotiator, and Miguel Ortiz, Ripley's old academy instructor. So Lee said, reviewing the briefing on her tablet, rogue AIs with control of life support. This should be interesting. Just another Tuesday, Ripley shrugged. At least we're not dealing with those methane-breathing hive minds from last month. My suit still smells like farts. Ortiz chuckled. When I was training you cadets, I never imagined we'd become the galaxy's crisis counselors. Humanity, solving problems one hostage situation at a time, Ripley quipped. Not the worst legacy. Speaking of legacies, Lee nodded toward the viewport, where a massive billboard hung in space near the transit hub. It depicted a human in a diplomatic uniform with a confident smile, alongside text in 17 different languages. Got trouble? Get a human. I still can't believe they used my face for that, Ripley groaned. Could be worse, Ortiz patted his shoulder. At least they didn't go with humanity, yeah. Like the marketing department wanted. As their shuttle approached the Andromeda outpost, Ripley prepared his negotiation strategy. Somewhere in the back of his mind, he wondered if perhaps this was humanity's true purpose in the cosmos, not to conquer stars or build empires, but to bring their unique brand of creative problem-solving to a galaxy that had grown perhaps too logical, too predictable, too civilized for its own good. "Ready to save the day?" Lee asked as they suited up. "Always," Ripley grinned. "It's what humans do best."